Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma thabbitna 'inda al-mawti bi la ilaha illallah. Ameen. So, welcome once again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the fourth or fifth session. I'm not recalling the fifth session. Today is the fifth session of evolution of Fiqh. And so far we have talked about the Qur'an. We are talking about the foundational stage, which was the first stage in which laws were revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the stage where we have the primary source as the Qur'an, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the explanation of the book in the form of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we talked about last session about the Meccan and the Medinan revelations. So what we said was that there is a big difference in the content, in the style, in the way the laws are being revealed in Mecca as compared to how things are happening in Medina. And the reason for that is obviously the different situation the Muslims are in. In Mecca, they are in a situation of weakness. They are in a situation of building. It is the first initial stage where they have to build their Iman. So a lot of verses about Iman, Tawheed, Allah, His attributes, afterlife, the day of judgment, what happens, building up your faith. Those are the concerns of the Meccan revelation. Also, we have the only act of ibadah which is mandated in Mecca is the salah, which is the prayer. The 5 daily prayers are the only, it's an exception when it comes to the Meccan revelation, that it is the only law that was revealed in Mecca. In Medinan revelation, there are changes. Obviously, Muslims are in a different situation in Medina. They are ruling. The Prophet ﷺ is the head of the state in Medina, and they are basically running the society. They are running the show. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Medina reveals verses or surahs talking about marriage laws, building up families, about administration, laws related to justice, laws related to ruling between people, different groups, criminal laws, financial laws. Now the Muslims are running their own businesses in Medina. So as the Muslim society becomes powerful in Medina, the Medinan revelation reflects that change. Also, we have for the first time revelations related to jihad, fighting in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in Mecca they were weak and Allah did not allow them to take up arms because that would have been self-destruction. Their numbers were too low to take on any or put on any kind of resistance. But in Medina now they were large in numbers. They had treaties signed with the Jewish community. They had treaties signed with other tribes of Arabia. So they had some ability now to defend themselves. And they needed to defend themselves because now they were no longer under the protection of their tribes. In Mecca, they were under the protection of their tribes. Meaning, the Quraysh, even though they hated Islam and they hated the Prophet, peace be upon him, they could not attack him or kill the Sahaba because there would have been retaliation on behalf of their sub-tribes. But in Medina, there was no such tribal protection. So they had to defend themselves and they had to, take up arms. So Medinan revelation now starts talking about war, starts talking about laws related to war, when to fight, when not to fight, the month of Haram, the 4 months in which fighting was not allowed, what to do in those months. So all kinds of questions get raised related to the protection and the safety of the Muslims. Also, we have now in Medina a new group known as the Bani Israel, which was not present in Mecca. In Mecca, there were basically the mushrikeen, the idol worshippers. The Quraysh was in power. And the Jewish and the Christian community were very, scarce in number. You would find maybe individuals in Mecca who might follow that path. But in Medina, you had whole tribes, Jewish tribes or Christian, tribes would come and visit from time to time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed laws or revered history, stories related to the Bani Israel to guide the Muslims on how to interact with this new group. Also, we have a new group in Medina, which is the hypocrites. In Mecca, there were no hypocrites. Why? Because in Mecca, there was no use of becoming a Muslim for worldly reasons. You would actually be a loser if you became a Muslim. You would be harmed, you would be in trouble, you would be ignored, you will be oppressed if you become a Muslim in Mecca. But in Medina now, there are benefits of becoming a Muslim. Because everyone is becoming a Muslim, you will be given certain concessions if you become a Muslim. You will be protected if you become a Muslim. You see that Islam is growing, Islam is becoming powerful. So maybe you will have a share of those victories, or you will have part of that dunya which was being earned by the Muslims in Medina. So a lot of hypocrites now come into the picture in Medina. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals verses in Medinan revelation talking about these hypocrites, how to deal with them, how do they think, their psychology, what works, what doesn't work, so on and so forth. So that's why there is a big difference between the content of the Meccan revelation and the Medinan revelation. Most of the surahs which appear at the end of the Qur'an are Meccan. The short surahs, which we memorize as children, and we grow up and we recite most of them in our prayer, most of them are Meccan. And that is why they are recited the most in the prayer. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept them short, so that they could be recited in the prayer, which tells you that the focus of the Muslim community should always be faith first. Because you're going to recite those surahs over and over again in your prayers 5 times a day. So what are those surahs talking about? About Aqidah, about faith. They don't really talk too much about laws, okay, because they are Meccan. So which tells you that in Islam, the foundation is the faith. If the faith is not strong, if the faith is not complete, then you can have those laws in place and you can be outwardly following those laws, but it's not going to have any effect, because your intention will be problematic, your heart will be corrupted, your deeds will lack that sincerity which is important in Islam. So it is important for us as a lesson that we also take this approach from the Qur'an. You start with the Meccan content, build your faith, build your aqidah, build your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you slowly enact the laws in your life, and then you will see that those laws will become easy for you to follow, and also you will enjoy them. You will not have a problem following those laws. You'll not hear complaints on, oh, this is too hard and that is too difficult and this shouldn't apply in our situation and that was 1400 years ago. And you hear all these kinds of complaints by Muslims these days regarding halal and haram. Oh, you're allowed to build one house with riba, with interest money. It's okay to do so. All these things are there because the foundation is not there. And so you can keep on justifying whatever you want to do, but until and unless you come to the real point, you're not going to move ahead with that. So that was what we covered in the previous sessions. Today, we start talking about another section, which is the themes of the Qur'an. The Qur'an, it has these underlying themes, the basic themes on which it builds its laws, it builds its message, its revelation. So what are some of these themes? The first one is information related to belief in Allah, His angels, His scriptures, His prophets, and the affairs of the next life. This is the first theme, and this is once again in the Meccan revelation. You find this theme is very strong. This is related to your aqidah, the 6 pillars of faith or the 6 articles of faith. What are the 6 articles of faith? Believe in Allah, believe in angels, prophets and messengers, His books, the revelation, akhirah, afterlife, and qadr of Allah, that everything happens with the permission of Allah, whether good comes to you or evil comes to you, then you will be patient because it is allowed by Allah, or it is from Allah. So that is the first theme. And these themes, basically you can take any verse from the Quran and you will find that one of these themes will be in operation. So take any verse of the Quran, you'll find that some of these themes, you'll find that they are there. So one of them is belief, okay, related to your spiritual matters. These topics are covered within the field of study known as theology. In Arabic, the term which is used is ilmul kalam of al-aqidah. Ilmul kalam fil aqidah. Okay. Ilmul kalam, by the way, means philosophy. Okay, if you just hear this term, kalam, knowledge of kalam, that is philosophy. That's not what the Islamic understanding is. Ilmul kalam fil aqidah is what the Islamic understanding of philosophy related to beliefs, your Islamic beliefs. So we're not just talking about philosophy of Aristotle or philosophy of the Greeks or the Indians or whatever. That will be ilmul kalam. We are going one step ahead and making sure that we're talking about ilmul kalam, but defined by the Qur'an and the Sunnah. Ilmul kalam in our aqidah. Aqidah means our belief system. Okay, so that is what the Qur'an focuses on, to build a theology, to build a philosophy, an identity, a faith identity on which you are going to stand. Okay, because without that, once again, the laws will be useless. You need some kind of foundation. So that is the foundation, which is the belief system or the aqidah, ilmul kalam fil aqidah. The second theme of the Quran is information related to deeds of the heart and the soul, and the moral principles and rules of conduct aimed at the development of character. Okay, how to improve your character. Okay, now you have Iman. You believe in Allah, you believe in His angels, you believe in His books, you believe in Qadr, the day of judgment. But now this should lead to an improvement in your personality. As a human being, it should lift you up. As a human being, you should not remain the same before belief and after belief. If you're the same, then that means that belief is useless. There has to be a practical use, a practical improvement which should show in your character if you have belief. And this is a good way of gauging your Iman. If you feel that you're not improving in your character, if you're not becoming more patient, if you're not becoming more truthful, if you're not having more taqwa in your dealings with people, okay, then that means that your faith is problematic. You might say, I believe, but it's not strong enough yet. Okay? Because faith should increase character. And so this is the second theme of the Quran, the verses of the Quran which want to lift up your morality, which want to increase your humanity, which wants to further emphasize on the good morals which are there in your belief system, which your belief system should dictate to you or should transform into you as your character. So this will be the second theme. This is known as ilmul akhlaq. Okay, so we have ilmul kalam fil aqidah, and now we have ilmul akhlaq. Building your akhlaq, building your character. Okay, so a lot of verses of the Quran talk about character, talk about speech, good speech versus evil speech, talk about being good to your neighbors, talk about being good to your parents, talks about leadership, how to obey your leadership, talks about being good to your women in your household. So all of these are related to akhlaq, things which are going to improve your character. Not wasting, like today's khutbah was on wasting. That would be part of ilmul akhlaq. Your belief should make you realize that resources should not be wasted. Okay, if you're not doing that, then once again the belief is problematic. So that is the second theme of the Quran, is to build your character. The third one is information related to deeds of the limbs and contained within a body of commandments, prohibitions and choices. And this is what we call law, Islamic law. Okay. So the third theme of the Quran is to provide you with laws to govern yourself, your limbs, your actions, and to confine them within commandments of halal and haram. What can I eat? Who can I get married to? What kind of jobs can I do? What kind of work? What kind of money is okay for me? What is not okay for me? So all the laws will come into this third category, which is fiqh, Islamic law. Okay, fiqh. And this is the focus of our discussion, the third one. Okay, the first one, aqidah, you can have an aqidah class for that, right? The second one, akhlaq, you can also have a class on Islamic morals. But this particular class is going to focus on this third theme of the Quran, which is Islamic law, which is fiqh. Okay, these commandments which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent, by which we govern ourselves, by which we carry out our daily daily routines, daily acts of worship, our dealings with people, our trade transactions, everything included in that. So do we understand the three themes of the Quran? Yes, sister.
Limbs.
Limbs, your body parts. Okay, your hands, your eyes, anything which is related to your body. So it governs your limbs, meaning it gives direction to your body even. What to wear on your body, what is not allowed to wear on your body, how to take care of your body when you're sick, things such as that. What to see, what not to see. Okay, what to eat, what not to eat. This is all related to you as a human being in body. These are the outward laws. Okay, spiritually, that's something in your heart, and then there is this outward facet of your humanity by which you govern yourself. And that is why Islam is a complete religion. That is why Islam is a complete religion. Those people or those philosophies which focus on just one of these themes go astray. If you just focus on spiritual matters and say, well, you can do whatever you want. You can follow whatever you want. You don't have to follow any laws, any commandments. Just love God. Just have faith in God. There are philosophies like that out there. Both in non-Muslim religions and even in Islam, there are people who claim that Islam is all about spiritual matters. And then there are those on the other extreme who just want to follow rituals. They don't want to focus on the spiritual aspects, on their sincerity, on their connection with Allah, as long as you just follow these laws. This is where we as Muslims have drifted into cultural practices, which have crept into our societies, and we say, you just have to do it this way. Because our forefathers, our society, that's how they do it. You have to have a marriage which lasts 5 days long. This is how we do it. If you don't do it like this, what will the neighbors say? What will my aunts and uncles say? Okay, so it's the ritual part. It's just the cultural part, the outer part. Okay, we just have to do this like that. So that's also incorrect. Okay, so you have to combine the two, and you need both things. And we said that as a human being, Islam has come for the human being. The human being has a spiritual side. The human being has a physical side. The human being has a practical side. All these sides need guidance. And that is why Islam is a complete religion. Because if you just focus on one part of your humanity and leave the others, what will happen? You will misguide yourself. You will go to extremes. Because you're focusing only on one part and you're neglecting the others. So just like a balanced diet, the body needs different kinds of things. Okay, you need your cholesterol, you need your fats, and you need your healthy stuff too, right? Really, you need fat. And a lot of people don't, especially if you look at the diet of the Sahaba, they had a lot of fat in their diet. But that was because they were working a lot. That's why we should not follow that same diet, because we're not working the same. But what I'm saying is a healthy diet, a balanced diet, you need calcium, you need potassium, you need, all these other things. If you just keep eating one thing, saying this is all I need, you're going to get sick sooner or later. Okay? The same thing in your spirituality. You need faith, you need laws, you need things which will tell you how I should dress. You need things which will tell you how I should, use my resources, my eyes, my limbs, all of these things. So Islam is for the entire human being, not just part of his humanity or her humanity. Okay? Now we move on to the legal content of the Quran. So out of these three themes, what will be our focus on? On the third one, the legal content of the Quran, okay, and the Sunnah, meaning the laws of the Quran and the Sunnah. So the first point is the legal content deals with dealings between Allah and men. What should your relationship be with Allah? What kind of laws should govern this relationship? Because relationships always have limits, remember this. Relationships are never open-ended. You can do whatever you want with me and I'll be your friend. No, it doesn't work like that. You can do whatever you want with me and I'll still be, I'll still be your teacher. No, it doesn't work like that. Relationships have rules. Relationships have limits. Okay? So what is the limits? What are the rules related to our relationship with Allah? How far can we go in one direction or the other? So the legal content of the Qur'an tells us about this. What are we required to do in order to establish a good relationship with Allah? And in return, what are we going to get? What are our limits and what are the limits Allah has set on Himself? See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the infinite one, even He has put limits on Himself. Says, you do this, I'm going to give you this. I'm never going to be unjust with you. These are limits Allah has made haram on Himself, injustice. Now, does Allah need to follow any limits? If Allah oppresses us all, can we do anything about that? We cannot do anything about that. If Allah wants, He can do whatever He wants. He is one with great power and nobody can question Him. He is the King of Kings. But He has put limits on Himself. He said, these are the things which I have made haram for myself. Okay. Meaning, if you are a believer, if you follow my commandments and I put you in hellfire, no, that's not the way of the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it cannot be that the good one and the evil one, they are equal before Allah. This is also not the way of Allah. See, so Allah has established rules for Himself and He has given us rules to follow when it comes to our relationship with Him. So that is the first one. What does this include? This would include all the religious rites which are not valid without correct intentions. Some of them are purely religious forms of worship, like the prayer and the fasting. When you pray and you fast, this is purely between you and Allah. It's purely religious. Okay? So that is part of this dealing between Allah and us. Another one is the socio-economic form of worship, like the zakah. The zakah, when you give money to the poor, then who are you giving it for? For Allah. Because Allah told you that this money does not belong to you, you need to transfer it to the poor. And He tells you who the poor are. He gives you the 8 categories in the Qur'an you can give your zakah to. So this is also coming in our relationship with Allah, even though it has to deal between human beings. You are giving me zakah, but actually you're doing it for Allah. You're not asking me for any rewards or any thanks or any paybacks. Saying, here, it's your money. Allah told me to give it to you. Assalamu alaikum. Right? It's between you and Allah. You're expecting your rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's also a part of our relationship with Allah, socio-economic. Another one is the socio-physical. This will also be economic, is the Hajj, for example. When you go for Hajj, you sacrifice yourself, your time, okay, your energy, your body, but also your money. You need money in order to go for Hajj. But also you interact with people when you go for Hajj. You have to be patient. When somebody pushes you around in Hajj, you cannot turn around and slap him on the face, right? You just control yourself. Why? Because you are here for the sake of Allah. You're there to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even our dealings with each other go back to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why it's important to build a very strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that relationship is strong, we will not have problems with our other relationships. We will know where to be patient. We will know where to push. We will know where to back off. We will know where to just turn around. We will know, okay, this is where I need to do the service and get out of here. Okay, we will not run into much trouble with people if we understand our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it will help us. Okay, we will know how to control our anger. We will know where to be angry for the sake of Allah, where not to be angry for the sake of Allah, where to become strict for the sake of Allah, where to become soft for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the first theme. This is the first theme when it comes to the legal content of the Qur'an. Part of the legal content is dealing with ibadah. Ibadah, your ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How to worship Him, when to worship Him, how many times to worship Him. Okay, what are the different ways of worshiping Him? Worshiping Him with our bodies, how to do that. Worshipping Him with our money. I have money, how should I worship Allah through my money? Allah tells you that. Okay, I have time and resources. Okay, I can go for Hajj, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So This is part of the content of the Qur'an, teaching us how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once again, this thing you could not have known by yourself. If Allah had not revealed these things, like the 5 pillars, the prayer for example, do you think we ourselves would have been able to know what is the best way of worshipping Allah, reaching out to Him, communicating with Him? No. We could have tried, and that's what other religions try to do. They try to come up with their own way of reaching out to Allah through a person, through an idol, through a spirit, whatever, But where does that way come from? What is the source of that way? Can you guarantee that this communication which I am doing with Allah or with God is working? Allah is really listening to me? Allah really accepts of this way of communication? No. Allah will decide what is acceptable and what is not. You and me cannot enforce our way of worship on Allah. We cannot say, oh Allah, okay, you're God, we know that, don't tell us anything, we will decide how to worship. This is not Islam, or this is not submission to that Creator. If you want to submit to that Creator, let Him tell you how to worship Him. Let Him tell you what is right and what is wrong. Instead of saying, okay, you're God, but we don't really need you in our right and wrong. I'll decide based on my intellect what is good for me and what is not good for me. Okay, well then you have your own religion. You worship yourself then. A lot of us, we don't know, but we worship ourselves. We give preference to our opinions over what Allah wants us to do. So many times, especially when it comes to laws, legal issues, practical issues, we want to do what we want to do, and then we want to ignore what Allah and His Messenger have said, and then we sometimes try to find a way around it. Why do people go for fatwa shopping? Fatwa shopping, okay, is this haram or halal? Okay, let me go from one website to another website until I find what I'm really looking for. I really want this to be halal. Some sheikh will say it is halal. You will always find one opinion out there which will match what you want to do. So that's what people do. They jump from one madhab to another madhab, or they jump from one scholar to another scholar just so that they can satisfy themselves. And they'll say, brother, I have a fatwa. I say, brother, this is haram in the Qur'an. So I have a fatwa from Sheikh so and so that it's okay in my case. Okay, what can you do? So the intention should be to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands, not to try to dodge them, not to try to go around them, skip them somehow, thinking that we have fooled Allah. That's what you're basically doing. You're thinking that you're fooling Allah. Allah wants you to do it this way. You say, no, I'm going to do it this way. I have my own way of getting to Jannah, oh Allah. I don't need your way. That's what you're basically saying. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously does not accept that, and that's why the Quran talks about how we can worship Him.
Brother Said, would you consider the prayers and the fasting as also socio-physical act?
They are at some levels. They are because if you're coming to the masjid, you're praying together in a congregation, you're following an imam, there is that social aspect to it, and obviously it is physical as well. But those are pure worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not really benefit anyone other than you.
Okay.
Right? When you're fasting, you're benefiting only yourself. When you're praying, you're benefiting only yourself. So in that way, they are unique. Whereas the other acts, there is some benefit. When you give zakat to somebody, it benefits them.
Okay.
Hajj also, the organization of Hajj, you're paying for the money, you're using a flight to get there. There's a lot of benefit, there's a lot of business which comes because of Hajj. So there is that social aspect even for Hajj. And also the unity aspect is there with Hajj.
Sacrificing the animals.
Sacrificing the animals, sending their meat to the poor. So Hajj is a very comprehensive form of worship. It includes everything actually. The second aspect is dealing with men. So the Quran teaches us how to deal with Allah, what are our limits, how to worship Him, but then also teaches us how to deal amongst ourselves. And this can be divided further into subcategories. The first one is laws ensuring and defending the propagation of Islam. These are embodied in the codes of armed and unarmed struggle. How are you going to save your Islam? How are you going to make it strong on the earth? How are you going to propagate it? How are you going to make it reach out to people? What are the laws? How should I do it? What is the right way of doing it, and what are the wrong ways of doing. If somebody attacks my religion, what should I be doing? How should I defend my religion? If somebody comes and takes over my country and wants to impose their religion on me or their philosophy on me, what should be my response? Okay, so Islam needs protection. Islam should be protected. Okay? It is the greatest asset the Muslims have. Wouldn't the Muslims protect their artifacts? Wouldn't we protect our gold and silver in our houses? Wouldn't we protect our industries, our agricultural products, things which are valuable to us? We would protect all of those things, our land. Why not our religion? Our religion needs the greatest protection. And once again, this can be at the spiritual level, where you need protection against shaitan, which all of us need to protect our religion from shaitan, from our evil nafs. And that's jihadun nafs, working against your own nafs, struggling against your own nafs. But also, it is required at a practical level. Because, as we said, Islam is a system. And that system can only be working if the people who are implementing that system are in control. You cannot be running a system and somebody who doesn't even believe in the system is trying to run the system. They're never going to run that system the way it should be run. It has to be run by those who have faith in that system. It has to be run by those who know how to run the system. That is why the scholars are so important. That is why there should be guidance which the governments should take from scholars. Governments should always keep the scholars in the loop, asking their opinions. What should we do in this area? What is the guidance of Islam in that area? And so on and so forth. So, the protection of Islam is the number one goal of the laws which are related between men. Between us, the first thing is, I need to protect my Islam. Then I will think about other things. Okay. Then I'll think about my economic condition. Then I'll think about my social condition. Then I'll worry about my bread and butter, whatever. First thing is my Islam. So the Qur'an gives us laws related to the defense of Islam. Situations where you should defend Islam and what are the rules? When should you desist? When should you go on? When should you be the aggressor? When should you be the defender? All those laws Islam gives us and guides us towards them, because once again there is a lot of abuse which can happen with these laws. Don't we see these people who are so-called, trying to bring back the Sharia and trying to bring back Islamic law and so on and so forth, how they go to extremes, how they abuse this whole concept of defending Islam, and in the name of defending Islam, they kill Muslims. In the name of defending Islam, they call Muslims kafir. That's what they do, takfir, all the time. You hear these guys, these guys are kafir because they are working in the government, and the government is not really an Islamic government, and the president was chosen by the White House, so that means everyone who's working with the government is a kafir, that means I can kill them. So this is not the defense of Islam. This does not justify you. So there is a lot of abuse when it comes to these laws. That is why it's important for us to understand this section of Islamic law very carefully and analyze it and seek guidance from those who know. Seek guidance from the real scholars of Islam in this matter. The second one is family laws for the development and protection of the family structure. These include laws concerning marriage, divorce, and inheritance. So after your Islam is preserved, your faith is preserved, what is the next section in the society which needs a lot of work, a lot of emphasis, a lot of training, a lot of tarbiyah, a lot of guidance? That is the family issues. Because if a family is strong in society, the society will be strong. When the family becomes weak, society becomes weak. When the children stop respecting their parents, that's a big problem. Imagine this son or this daughter. This daughter wears the hijab and the son is going 5 times a day to the prayer. But when the mother says, "Oh my son, can you throw the garbage out for me?" The son says, "I don't have time, mom. I'm too busy with my Qur'an." See, it contradicts what you're doing. The Qur'an is telling you to respect your parents, and you're using it to disobey your parents. Okay? Imam Abu Hanifa, one of the great scholars of the religion, his students used to be really annoyed with his mother. Because whenever he would teach them, his mother would come, his old mother would come and say, put me to sleep. The great Imam Abu Hanifa's mother comes and says, put me to sleep, I cannot sleep. And he would go with her and he would put her to sleep. We don't know what he used to do with her, maybe sing something for her or something like that. And then he would put her to sleep and then come back. And his students used to just hate the sight of his mother because she would take all his time and they wanted his time. He was their scholar, he was going to teach them hadith and Qur'an and everything. But he would do that every time. Now imagine the same student who goes back in his own house and his mother is there and mother tells him to do something. You think he will do it or not do it? He will do it because he's seen his sheikh see what the respect of a mother is. His sheikh has taught him through his practical example. You need to listen to your mother. It's not just telling him hadith, not just telling him Quranic verses and stories and lectures and khutbahs and so on and so. He's showing it with his character. So the family needs to be very strong. The relationship between parents and children, the relationship between husband and wife, the relationship between brothers and sisters, these are very, very important relationships. They complete us. As human beings, we need these relationships. You cannot live by yourself, isolated in your own world, where you don't know what your parents are doing and you don't care about your brothers and sisters. That's not how we live. We live with people. People who have struggled with us, people who have, given everything of their lives so that we could have a life. So we need to respect these relationships. So a lot of Quranic verses talk about family relationships. So many verses talking about the rights of parents. So many verses talking about the stories of the prophets and how they trained their children, guidance for the parents. So many verses talking about, stories between brothers. We have the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers. And see how Yusuf alayhi salam, at the end of all what they did with him, he forgave them. He was merciful towards them. Verses related to marriage. What are the ingredients of a good marriage? Talking about good examples in human history, some of the wives of the prophets. And also talking about the bad examples, the wives of some of the prophets who were evil, and who planned against them. So talking about family relationships and strengthening the bond of the family relationship. Because remember, Shaitan is looking all the time to break the family. Because he knows the impact it will have on society. Once you break the family, then everything goes downhill from there. Your spiritual levels will go down. Your taqwa will go down. Everything will go down. Why? Because there is a missing part in your heart now. There is a broken piece in your heart now, which it's very hard to repair. And you're trying to glue it and you're trying to tape it, but it's not going to work. It requires a lot of effort and a lot of time to heal the wounds which are inflicted to us by those who are close to us. If somebody I don't know curses me, I'll get angry for 2 minutes, then I'll forget him. On the road, you're driving on the road and somebody did something and he cursed you because you were crossing him or whatever, and you're like, what? How dare this guy curse me like that? And you might curse him back or something, and then after a day or two, you'll forget this guy. But imagine if your close friend, your close brother, somebody in your family did that same thing with you, you will remember it for years. That wound will be in your heart for years, you'll remember it.
Can you tell the story about the shaitan who caused divorce?
Yeah, so we have the story of the famous story of Shaitan, who, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who actually at the end of the day, he asks the different devils he sends out, he asks them, what did you do today? Because Iblis himself does not have the time to go around 6 billion people and misguide them, right? He has a whole army, he has a group. See, so even the devil needs a group, cannot work alone. So how about the good people? We also need a group. That's why we need to be together. So he asked them, what did you do today? So one of them will say, I made this man kill another man. He said, didn't do much. Next. What did you do today? Okay, I made this man drink alcohol. Not much. Next. What did you do today? I made this man commit adultery. Next. I made a separation between a husband and a wife today. Shaitan, he gets up from his place, his throne, wherever, and he hugs him. Says, "You're my man. You are the one who did something big today." So this is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So this tells you how important for shaitan it is to break the family. Zina, adultery, killing, all of these are minor things for him. They do not cause as much problem in society. But when there is a separation, when there is a break in a family, that causes the greatest problem. Okay? And those who have been involved, they know the kind of difficulty, the kind of issues which linger on with you for the rest of your life. It's not just like, okay, a 1 month thing or a 2 month thing, my family broke. No, that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So it is very important for us to work on strengthening our families. Okay? Repairing relationships. If you've had a sour relationship with your parents, with your cousins, with your uncles and aunts, whoever in your family, try to repair. Try to call them. Try to ask forgiveness from them. Kill your ego. Because in family relationships, the biggest problem is the ego. I am always right. I'm not going to say sorry. He's always trying to impose his thinking on me. I'm not going back to him. No. You have to kill your ego. You go back for the sake of Allah. You're not going back because you agree with the other person's position. Maybe he's wrong. They are wrong. You don't have to agree with that. But you're going there for the sake of Allah so that you can join relationships, get the rewards of joining relationship, and soften the heart of the other person. Because once their heart is softened, remember the dua of the family members is accepted by Allah. Especially the parents and the children. If the parents make dua for the children, or the children make dua for the parents, Allah accepts this. This is according to the hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So no matter how much differences there are between you and your parents, if they say a dua for you, that is worth everything. That is worth everything. So it is worth going back to them saying, let's forget about it. I might have been wrong. I am sorry. Doesn't hurt for us to say sorry. Doesn't hurt your ego. Will not destroy you. It will actually make you stronger. We should all learn to apologize. Okay? Especially the brothers. Especially the brothers. Because as brothers we have this ego issue that, how can I say sorry to a woman? Or, to my mother or to my wife or whatever. No. Repair relationships. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you will benefit from it. At the end of the day, the society will benefit from it. That is your contribution for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not belittle this act. This is very, very sacred, very, very important act if we realize it. Okay? So family laws, number 2. The Qur'an talks a lot about family laws. The third one is the trade laws governing business transactions, rental contracts, and this semester I am taking a course on Fiqh al-Muamalat, which is basically fiqh related to trade transactions. And I am just blown away by the amount of guidance the Qur'an and the Sunnah have related to every possible trade transaction you can think of. I mean, modern day you will say, these trade transactions are new. How can the Qur'an and the Sunnah guide me about these? You will find something in the Qur'an and the Sunnah talking about this form of trade transaction, which was not there in the time of the Prophet, but it's very similar to something which was there. And the Quran and the Sunnah guide us how to deal in these trade transactions. Everything from renting, from agricultural trade, from loans, how to take loans, what are the rules related to loans, guarantee, giving somebody a guarantee, the different kinds of partnerships, everything is there in Islam. You will be amazed if you go into the details of the Islamic economic system. It is a parallel economic system which it gives you, right neck to neck with what we have come up with. Actually, it's much, much better than what we have come up, because it is based on humanity, it is based on helping societies, it is based on building. Whereas what we have come up with is a very selfish way, where some people, they get rich and the rest of the society suffers. Okay? Take, for example, the insurance system which we have. Do you know only 3% of all the insurance money collected by the insurance companies goes back to the people who are paying insurance? Only 3%. 97% goes in their pockets. For years and years, you're paying car insurance, health insurance, life insurance, this insurance and that insurance. Islam has its own insurance system, which is based on equality, which is based on making everyone rich, which is based on making everyone feel safe. So everything is there in Islam, but it's just that we don't know it, or we don't find the time to go and research, or we feel, well, it's too difficult to do it now. We're living in these systems here in non-Muslim countries, so we should just forget about that system and just follow along with what everyone else is doing. So the Qur'an focuses a lot on trade transactions. Actually, the longest verse of the Qur'an is about trade. The longest verse, it's a whole page in Surah Al-Baqarah. Full page is one verse, and that verse is about trade and the writing of the contract when you are administering a trade transaction. So which tells you the importance of trade in Islam. Also, finally, criminal laws specifying punishments or compensations for various crimes. And unfortunately, this is what gets the most coverage in the media. Why? Because all these groups which are saying we are applying Sharia, what is the only Sharia they apply? Is this one. And even in this one, they just select a few laws here and there and say, okay, this is Sharia. This is not Sharia. Sharia is much vast, much bigger than what you're saying it is. And you're abusing it. You don't even have a system for it, and you're going, following and applying these laws instead of building a system which will purify the society from those evils. So these are there. Definitely these are there. These are there in every society and every culture. Don't we have penal law here in this country? Criminal law in this country, criminal law back home in our countries? Islam has its own criminal law. What's wrong with that? It's the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's based on justice, it's based on proof, it's based on equality. Whereas our laws, once again, are limited. They are based on what we think is right and wrong. Allah's law considers everything. Things which we cannot consider. Things which we cannot think of. So, we should be proud of Islam. We should be proud of everything in Islam. We should not be like, okay, let's talk about the economic laws. Let's forget about the penal laws. No, we need to talk about the penal laws too, but we need to understand them. We shouldn't be going to extremes or just concentrating on them. We need to talk about them in context of the whole system of the Sharia, not just them as a unit by themselves. Okay? So, dealings among men is the second part of the legal content of the Quran. Any questions? Yes, bro.
Previously said that you're not supposed to come up with your own religion. You don't have saying okay, I'm going to worship God doing this. Well, let's say we have brothers doing different careers like video design, media, graphic design, whatever. That's not really can't really physically benefit from. But someone's having an event, they're doing this, they're doing that. Got to record a lecture. They're doing something which is kind of New Age, but that's their form of ibadah, isn't that correct? Through their art, through whatever.
Yeah, of course. As long as what they're doing is not haram,
yeah.
Then that's also ibadah. Definitely it's ibadah, but it is not. What I'm talking about is direct worship. What you're talking about is an indirect way of. In that way, we all worship Allah through our work. A doctor, for example, who serves humanity is on his medicine. He is making ibadah of Allah subhanahu. A judge who rules justly in a court is making ibadah. So yes, those are all forms of ibadah for which you will be rewarded if you have the right intention. But what I'm talking about is the direct ways of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which many people have made up their own, instead of counting on what Allah has guided them to. Okay? But yeah, the areas where Allah has left it for you, then it's up to you the way you want to worship Him in those areas, it's fine, no problem. But the areas which He has specified, you and me have no choice. Right? For example, even if He specified, okay, you worship me like this in the area of law. If you're a judge, if you give these decisions, that will be my worship. If you don't give these decisions, this will not be my worship. Then the judge won't have a choice in that once again. But since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not specify those areas and has left human beings to worship Him or do good in His name or to do good for Him, for His cause, then those areas are fine. And those do not conflict the direct worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, moving on. The Quran itself, let's now talk about the spirit of the Quranic legislation. So we talked about the themes of the Quran, we talked about the themes of the legal content of the Quran to be more specific, and now we talk about the spirit of the Quranic legislation. This is a very important subject because if you do not understand the spirit behind the laws, you will end up abusing the law. You will end up abusing the law. For example, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, in the year of famine, he stopped the punishment of cutting off the hand of the thief. Okay, in Islam, if you steal, what is the law? Your hand will be cut off. But Umar ibn al-Khattab in that particular year, he lifted this punishment because of the famine, because a lot of reports were coming to him where people were stealing food. They didn't have food to eat, so they were forced to steal for their kids or whatever. Umar ibn al-Khattab, since he understood the spirit behind the law and not just the words of the law, he knew that this law does not apply in this situation. Yes, it is there. When you steal, then this is the punishment. But that law will only apply in situations where there is no need for you to steal, where you're not dying out of hunger and the government has given you enough opportunities to feed your children, where the government has given you enough opportunities to earn halal money. Like for example, these days we talk about back home, we have corrupt police officers, we have corrupt government employees, who take money from people to do stuff, right? Bribes. They take bribes from people to do stuff. And people are like, this is haram, haram, haram. These people are going to the hellfire. But there is another dimension to their situation. And that is, look at their salaries. What is that police officer who is standing all day in the traffic, directing the traffic left and right in the heat? What is he getting at the end of the month? Not enough for him and his family to survive. Just for basic needs, he doesn't get enough money so that he can survive. Some of the beggars actually make more money than him. Begging is actually more profitable than being a police officer in some of the countries in the Muslim world. So what does this person do? What does this person do? He has no choice but to accept those bribes because he has to go home and feed his children. Now I'm not saying taking bribes is okay. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that as leadership, as people who are judging these people, you should put yourself in his situation. And then say whether this is halal or haram or whatever, or criticize him after that. Because you and me would do exactly the same in his situation. Yet we find the courage to criticize this person, but we don't think about the situation he's going through. So there is a spirit behind the law. There is a spirit behind the law. There is the words of the law, and then there is a spirit behind the law. If you do not understand the spirit of the law, you will end up abusing and causing injustice, causing corruption, actually doing the opposite of what the law came for. The law came to make the society better. But since you don't know the spirit of the law, you're going to implement it in situations where it is not implemented and you're going to cause problems for people. Okay? So that is why we need to understand it. The Qur'an itself announces that it was revealed to reform human condition. So that is the first and foremost thing you have to understand. Islamic law improves human condition. Islamic law improves human condition. If you are implementing a law which does not follow this principle, then you need to think again. Maybe there is something wrong you're about to do. You say, okay, this is an Islamic law, we're going to follow it. But when you follow it, instead of improving human condition, it declines human condition. Then there is a problem. There is something you're missing there. Because that is the intent of Islamic law. It should make things better for humanity. Okay? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not reveal anything but good to human beings. Islam did not erase all pre-Islamic customs and practices. Instead, it removed every facet of corruption and cancelled all customs which were harmful to the society. This is very strange. Usually what happens is, when a new system takes over the old system, the new system wants to abolish everything from the old system. Islam did not do that with the Arab culture. The Islamic law, it did not say everything the Arabs used to do is cancelled from now and this new system will be applicable. No, it did not do that. Many things which the Arabs were doing, Islam said it's okay, no problem. You can continue doing it. Okay? For example, Hajj rituals. The Arabs, they had their Hajj rituals before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They had been there since the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Okay, so the Arabs used to come and go around the Kaaba, make ibadah, do all the rites which we do today in Hajj. Islam only changed those rites in Hajj which were evil, which were corrupt forms. Okay, for example, one of the things the Arabs used to do, the Quraysh, they used to sell uniforms for Hajj. If you come for Hajj, and I am from Quraysh, I am hosting the Hajj, you have to buy a uniform from me. If you don't buy a uniform from me, you cannot do Hajj. And if you are poor, you cannot afford a uniform, then you have to do Hajj naked. Take all your clothes off, do the Hajj. Or you buy the uniform from us. That is the law of the Quraysh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abolished this, finished this off. This is not right. Making ibadah of Allah naked, and that will be the worst place to be naked in the Kaaba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abolished that, but did He say, okay, no, everything which you are doing is wrong, let's replace your Hajj rituals and come up with a new system of making Hajj? No, Allah did not do that. You are going, counterclockwise, so from now on, you have to go clockwise. Allah did not do that. He says, okay, continue doing what you're doing as long as those things are good, as long as those things do not harm anyone, as long as those things are not forms of corruption, you can do that. And that is a general rule in Islam about any culture in society. Whenever Islam will come into a culture in society, its local traditions and cultural practices, as long as they do not conflict with Islam, as long as they do not go against any principles in Islam, you can do them, no problem. It's okay. Yes, brother Levi.
So, the rituals of Hajj was this made by the polytheists, or did this come by the time of the previous Arab prophets?
No. Ibrahim alayhi salam did not leave these rituals. These were made up by the polytheists, the Quraysh people of Mecca.
So then, how did it become part of Hajj? How did circumambulating the Kaaba become part of Hajj? When it was originally part of Hajj?
Oh, so you mean no, Ibrahim alayhi salam and the earlier prophets, they had left the rituals of Hajj, the pure rituals of Hajj. Okay? So these were all there, sacrificing the animal, going from one place to another. All of these were there, left by Ibrahim alayhi salam. But then what happened was the Arabs, the Quraysh, they introduced new things into it. They added things which were not there. So Islam came and took those things out again.
So, because it wasn't clear, like the way the first time you said it, it looked like you said the polytheists that came up with circumambulating the Kaaba.
No. If that is what you understood, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that they came up with, additions besides what Ibrahim alayhi salam had left and corrupted the rituals of Hajj. And so Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he came, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Qur'an and the Sunnah, He clarified those issues and restored it back to the original way. Yeah. So that's a good thing that you asked, so that other people are not confused about it. So the same can be said about marriage, for example. Before Islam, the Arabs, they used to have different kinds of marriage contracts, okay, in their culture. One of them was the regular marriage contract like we have today between a husband and a wife, signing a contract of nikah or marriage, and then starting a new life like that. That's one. They used to have this form of marriage back then. Another form was where the woman would get married to several men at the same time. She would get married to several men, and whenever she would have the child, she would be the one who would decide who the father is, and the man would have to take responsibility of this child. He cannot run away now because the woman says so, and so they will start a family from there. So this was another form of marriage which was acceptable in pre-Islamic Arabia. Another form of marriage which was acceptable in pre-Islamic Arabia was, let's say a man and a woman, they got married and they don't have kids. So the man would send his wife to sleep with another man and then, would have a child, but the child would belong to this man. So this was also an acceptable form of marriage in Arabia. Another was, you can have as many wives as you want. The limit of 4 was not there in Islam. For those people who say Islam is, for the male domination or to satisfy the male, actually if you ask the males which system they would like, one where they have no limit or the one where they have a limit, I don't think the males will be very happy with the limit placed on themselves, especially that society. The Arab society was used to having many females. You tell them no more, 10 wives, no more 6 wives. You can only go up to 4. And even with that, there are conditions, and it's going to be tough. So they wouldn't like it. So it was not oriented to help men. It was actually oriented to bring justice and peace in society. Another form of marriage which was acceptable in Arabia was, if the father dies, all his wives become your wives. So all your moms, basically, your mothers, now become your wives. That was acceptable in Arabia. You inherit your wives from your father. Another form was prostitution, where a woman would put a flag outside her house, and it was an open entry for any man who wants to come. So all of these were acceptable forms of contracts between men and women. Now, what did Islam say? Did Islam say all of these are null and void and we'll come up with a new way? No, Islam said all these evil forms of marriage contracts are null and void, and that one where a man and a woman signs a contract with each other in front of 2 witnesses, that is the contract which is the good contract. So once again, it tells you Islam did not come to destroy the good features of a culture. If there are already good things in a culture, alhamdulillah, Islam doesn't need to come and change them. Okay? For example, in this society, as compared to back home, we have this concept of recycling. This is a good thing in this culture and society. They recycle things. Now, if Islam comes to such a land, should we say, no, this is a non-Islamic practice, this is wrong, we are not going to accept it, we are not going to recycle? No. Because it is something which it does not conflict Islam. Actually, it goes along with the Islamic message of preservation. It goes along with the Islamic message of conservation, taking care of resources. So alhamdulillah, no problem. So the point is, Islam did not come to overtake cultures and those practices within those cultures which were good practices. Islam did not change them. Only those aspects of those cultures were changed which were corrupt, which were based on evil, which were based on benefiting some at the expense of a lot of people. Those kind of things were changed by the Islamic law, not everything. Consequently, Islamic legislation forbade interest because it takes unfair advantage of the less fortunate members of the society. Fornication was forbidden due to its exploitation of women and the destruction of family bonds. And alcohol was prohibited because of the physical, psychological, spiritual damage which it inflicts on both the